I'm Franz Paris Cyber Skyline, and today we're going to be doing log analysis with spreadsheets. Now, there are a lot of fancy tools that professionals can use to analyze logs, but those can be overwhelming for beginners. So we're going to do things a little bit differently today. We're going to be using spreadsheets, which most people should hopefully be already used to. And as a plus, it's also a free tool to help you get started with log analysis in cybersecurity. So before I dive into like the actual log analysis, let's just go over the simple process that I'm going to use and I would recommend if you are new to log analysis. So the first thing that you are going to want to do is convert your log into a structured column format. This is the big setup process. It's really, really important that you do this and you do it well, because if you don't do it properly, your results are going to be incorrect. And so it would really be a shame to put in all this energy and effort, do your analysis, run through all the different filtering and everything, and then get the wrong answer. So make sure that you're doing your setup right. Make sure that when you split your log into columns, you bring that into your spreadsheet, that it is accurate and that it is clean. Once you have gotten your log file into this column format, the next thing you'll need to do is use filters and sorting to help you narrow down the data to whatever is relevant to your analysis. So presumably, you're not going to be looking at all of the data in one shot for most of your analysis questions. So as an example, maybe you're looking at how many attempts, how many incorrect login attempts were being made on this account. Well, what you'll need to do is filter the data to just the records associated, just the lines associated with that account, and also just the incorrect login attempts. So you're not looking at everything, you're looking at just those two conditions. So that's where the filtering and the sorting will come in handy. Once you've narrowed down your data, you will want to use the column stats functionality to start helping you crunch the data, especially if it isn't something as simple as just a normal count. So the column stats comes in really handy when you get into more sophisticated calculations. Now for today, I'm going to be using Google Sheets for the rest of my presentation, but these concepts are going to apply in the same way whether you're using Excel or another spreadsheet application. Conceptually, it's the same, the buttons might just be in different locations. So I mentioned splitting your lines into columns. This is how you're going to find it in Google Sheets. You're going to go to data, and then I've highlighted here, split text to columns. Now, I mentioned before, when you copy your log file into your spreadsheet, it's not going to be very helpful immediately after you copy it in. You have to parse out the data and separate it into columns. That'll make it a lot easier to manipulate. And when you use the split text to columns feature, it's going to try automatically to get it into columns, but depending on the type of file that you have, that might not work. You might need to manually provide in a delimiter or a separator. And also this might require multiple passes, because if there isn't a very clean, simple, hey, this one character is used to split every single line, every single column, then you're going to need to do multiple passes of this. Keep in mind that if that is going to be the case, if you do need to do multiple passes, you will want to make sure that you add in additional columns to make space for the new columns that will be created as a result of the split text to columns. Otherwise, if you don't do that, it will overwrite your existing data, and you'll have to undo that, or you don't realize it and then your data has just gone missing. So make sure that you add those additional columns if you have to do multiple passes. Now that second step is the filtering. This is pretty simple. If maybe you've done it before, you will want to first create a new header row if it does not already exist, and kind of label what each column represents. And then from there, you select the first row, go to data, create filter, and that's that. Really easy. After you create the filter, a drop-down icon will appear next to every cell in that row. And when you click on that, that will let you actually put in your filter parameters and do your sorting as well. And that final step that I discussed was using column stats. So if you haven't used column stats before, it's very helpful. Just select the column that you want to calculate and then go to data, column stats. And this will give you information like average value or the number of unique values in the column, or maybe a summation. You can get all of those things from column stats. Just make sure that when you do this, you double check your settings to make sure that you are omitting the header row, because by default, it will count everything in there, including your header row. So you're going to want to remove that from the calculation. All right, so that's enough talking. We've kind of briefed our process. Let's see in action, because I think that's going to help make it click a little better for everyone as we go through this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop over to my demo over here. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger as well so you can all see this. All right. And I'm going to go through one of the challenges in our practice gym. So the challenge that I'm looking at is the Nginx log analysis challenge. And we have the ability to download this log file here. I've already gone and done that. And what I'm going to do is open up that log file and just paste the contents of that log file into my Google Sheets here. So I'm in my Google Sheets, and I am going to do the first step, which is to split this into columns. Now, the Nginx log here is not easily separatable, because you might intuitively think, oh, well, it looks like there's a space between every single column. And that is true. However, there are text strings which are encapsulated in the quotes. And so if you split entirely just based on the space, you will accidentally break up a column which contains a string that has spaces. So we'll need a way to handle these strings with the quotes here. So yeah, we'll need to keep that in mind. And what I'll do first is, because it seems that those quotes are probably the best indicator for the separation between the columns, I'm going to first split on the quotes, and then I'll subsequently split on other parameters, because I don't have to split the entire file. I can selectively split one column into multiple columns. And so what I'll do here is I will click on A. This will select the entire column. And then I will be able to go column actions. Actually, where is it? I think it's data. Go to data and split text to columns. So what happened here is what I mentioned, where it might try to automatically detect the separator. And I think what it did is it looks like it might have chosen space or something else as a delimiter, as a separator here, but something went wrong, because like they're not the same number of columns, and it looks like this string that was in one of those rows got split into many, many different columns, which is not what we want. So we want to do a manual separation. And I said, I'm going to separate it by the quotes. So I'm going to do custom, and then I'm going to type in the quote. And then if I let this finish, you can see now that this looks more correct. We don't have these weird different number of columns. And that's a very clear indication if you've done a separation, a splitting correctly, is that you should get the same number of columns in each row. If you don't, then something's gone wrong. And there isn't necessarily going to be data in every single one of these columns. In this E column, it looks pretty empty. There doesn't look like there's any data. That's okay. But if I expand the F column here, there are some rows that have a lot of data in the F column. But if I go look what's after F, B, C, D, E, F, G, the G column is completely blank in all of our data. So all of these rows have the same number of columns. So it looks like we did this split correctly. Now, this split is not perfect. So if I look at some of these other columns, I can see here in the C column, we have what appears to be two numbers, which should be their own columns. And if I go to this A column, we've got an IP address, uh, some blank columns which are represented as these dashes, and then we've got a timestamp. So this isn't perfect. We need to do a little bit more work. And so what I will do right now is I will start by splitting column C into two columns. And I mentioned that I need to make sure that I create extra columns so I don't accidentally overwrite my data. What I'll do first is show you what will happen if I don't. So if I select column C and I do the split text to columns, you'll notice that this data in the D column, it gets overwritten. It disappears. So that's not what we want. So I'm going to create that extra column here. And because there's only one space in between these two numbers, if I split on space, the number to the left of that space is going to stay in the C column, and then the number to the right of that space is going to go to the D column. And then if we just inspect our E column, just keep an eye on it, make sure that it's correct, nothing's missing. And so select the column, go to data, split text to columns. Looks like the automatic detection worked for us, and all of our E column data is still there. So we didn't overwrite any data. So perfect. Cool. So then now we need to go to our A column, which looks like we still need to split it some more. I think probably the best way to split this is on space. And you can do it a different way if you would like. There's no one correct answer. And if I just look at this, I think that there is probably only one, two, three, four spaces in each cell. And so what I'll do is I will create three new columns. So you've got the first, this original A column is going to stay there. That will keep the first value. And then we've got another three more columns that we'll need. Now, I am making an assumption here because I have not confirmed manually that there does not exist a row in here that has more than four spaces. Because if it does have more than four spaces, it will start overwriting the data that we already have, because that'll be an extra column. And so again, it's very important to just make sure that you're not overwriting that data. That's an indication you're doing something wrong. What I'll actually do is I will protect this sheet or this column. So if I do protect range, what I can do is I can restrict it, or I can give a warning when editing this range, so that if we accidentally overwrite this data, we'll know, and then we can undo it. And so in theory, if I have one column too few, and then I do the split based on the space, I get the warning. So that's something else that you can do just for your own sanity, is protect the columns and provide a warning if they are edited, so you don't accidentally overwrite them. But with that in mind, I'm just going to come here, split text to columns on the space. Oops. I'm going to have to remove this. Hold on a second here. Oh, maybe I do need another column. See, it's it's handy. It's handy that we have this protection on. Cool. All right. So now we have our data separated correctly, and we actually have our protected column, which we can now remove. I'm just going to delete that. All right. So now for the next step, we're on step 2, And we know we're at step 2 because the information that we've got here, it looks pretty well separated. Depending on the questions that we'll have to answer, we may want to separate it further. But I can clearly see our A column, this is an IP address. B and C aren't really used. D, this is D is a timestamp. E is the time zone. F, this is like the HTTP method. And then we've got G here with our HTTP status codes. H, this is the size of the request. I from what I remember, I believe this is the referrer of the request. I don't know what J is, so it's empty though. And then this F, this looks like it is the user agent that we have. So with that in mind, let's create a header row, and I'm going to label it exactly as I described. So we've got IP. I'm just going to leave these as blank. Time zone, HTTP method, HTTP status, size, referrer, and yes, it's spelled incorrectly in the specification. So I'm also spelling it incorrectly. And then this is user agent. I probably don't need this to be so large because that's just annoying to deal with. So I'm gonna, can I shrink this easily? Nah, that's the wrong one. Let's shrink that so it's manageable. All right, there we go. So now that I've got my header row, I'm going to formally make it my header row. I'm going to freeze it so that it's sticky. It'll stay here as I scroll, which is a handy tip. So you don't forget what your columns are. And then I'm going to create filter like that. So now we've created our filter. So I think we're good to start trying to actually answer the questions now, because we haven't even looked at the questions that we're trying to solve. So I'm going to go back to our challenge, and I'm not going to answer all of the questions because a lot of them you solve in very similar ways. It'll be a little bit repetitive. So I'm going to be pretty selective in which ones to answer. I'm going to start with the first question, which is asking for how many different IP addresses reached the server. So we have an IP column. What I can do is click on my column and then go to column stats, and then make sure ignore rows is set to 1 because we want to skip that first row, the first header column. And I might need to move my head out of the way here. But what we can see over here is, hey, these are the IP addresses, how many times they appeared in here. And what's really cool is when I highlight on these IP addresses in the column stats, you can actually see it on the left side. The actual cells are being highlighted based on what I'm selecting in the stats. And I can see here unique values 47. So that's the number of unique IP addresses. So if I come back over here, 47. All right, perfect. We got our first answer. So that was pretty straightforward. I mean, there was no pulling teeth on this one. Clearly, I mean, I can see here, and actually even get this distribution here. You can actually see, hey, there's a lot of IP addresses which appear here multiple times. So being able to easily get this unique value, pretty handy. So the next question that I want to answer is going to be question number 2, which is how many requests yielded a 200 status. So coming back over here, there's 2 ways we can do this. One is we could just do an easy filter. So if I just filter only on the 200 statuses, I can just get those rows. And then if I highlight these rows, I'm I can get a count at the, actually, my body's covering it. All right. I'm gonna move my chair out of the way here for you. So the count 19. You can actually click on this and change what stat it's going to give you. So instead of count, I can get average, I can get sum, min, max, all of that. So that's one way that you could do this. The other way is, again, by using the column stats. So data, column stats, over here, 219 times. So come over here, type in 19. All right, cool, we got that. So 2 ways to do this. The next question I want to go do, and I'm going to skip forward ahead. The reason why I'm skipping forward, to get the number 400 statuses, I mean, that's the exact same thing that we did. We just do 400 instead of 200. So that's not particularly useful. Some of these other questions don't require a spreadsheet. You just manually look at the data and you can figure these out. So I'm going to go all the way to question number 7. What is the most popular version of Firefox used for browsing the website? All right, so I think we're going to need to do some filtering on this. I don't think we have a choice. We need to specifically look for the Firefox data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here, and then I am, actually I spelled refer wrong, but I didn't spell it the correct wrong way. All right. I am going to go to my user agent, and then I'm going to do a filter by condition, and then I'm going to select text contains, and then I'm going to type in Firefox. So this filters my results to just the user agents with the text Firefox. Now I have to give you a heads up about an annoying thing that Google Sheets does with the column stats, which is that if you just go to the column stats, you might think, all right, I filtered my data. You know, I'm just gonna choose the most common response here, and if I highlight it, you can see here it says whatever Mozilla, Google bot, whatever google.com bot.html. You can see that over there. That is not the correct answer, and it's also not. It shouldn't even be showing up based on our filter. I mean, we filtered for Firefox. The word Firefox isn't in here. Why is it showing up? And if you go scroll at the bottom, there's a disclaimer that says all stats include data in hidden or filtered rows. I don't know why Google decided to do this. That is unfortunate. So the way that I've been getting around this is I've just been creating another sheet. And then after I do my filter in the first sheet, I'm just going to select all the data and then just copy and paste it into here. and only keep those filtered results. And so now if I go and I do my my column stats, and I need to ignore the first row, now if I go here, the top result actually says Firefox, which is what I want. Time for the other annoying thing about the way that Google does its column stats. For some reason, you can't copy and paste these values. I'm trying to double click on it. It does not let me copy and paste, which is, yeah, quite annoying. So I'll go for the next best thing, which is because it will highlight the cells that match this, I can see in the green which cells contain the value that I want. So I'm just going to go to one of those and just copy that value in here. And then I can come over here and try to submit my answer. It says my character length is too long, so I'm going to need to cut it down. I think I probably am providing more information than what is necessary, and my head is in the way, so I'm going to move myself real quick. I'll move myself to this side. And what I'll do is I will just keep the end bit, which says Firefox 31.0. And now I've got that correct. So yeah, that's how you do that. We had to find a little bit of a workaround here for how Google does things. But it's not too bad. I mean, it's a very quick, easy copy paste. Just create a new sheet and do that. But yeah, I mean, this is a pretty sophisticated like request that we have here to be able to figure out like what's the most popular version of Firefox. I mean, we had to filter, like parse out the data, filter it out, only look at Firefox. We got to find the like how frequently different version numbers show up in there. We did all of that in Google Sheets. Like we didn't have to download any tools. We didn't have to pay any money. Really, really quick and easy. And it's something that hopefully people are generally familiar with. I hope that you've used the filters before in Google Sheets. It's extremely helpful. And if not, it's really easy to pick up on. So yeah, just go ahead and try it out. But you know, with that, just keep in mind that there are limitations for what we can do here. There are a certain number of functions that Google is providing in Google Sheets to help you do this analysis. So, I mean, we're getting, you know, totals. It looked like depending on like the values. If I go to like, if I go to a numeric value, I can get summations, I can get averages, I can get medians. But if you need to get some other sort of value, Google might not be able to give it to you automatically. Maybe something that maybe you can write a custom function or formula within Google Sheets to generate that value for you, but it could be too complicated. And especially if you need to do something where you're correlating data across multiple columns, that can get pretty tricky because like whenever we need to crunch anything on a single column, really, really quick and easy. But if you got to correlate them, it's way more complicated. You might have to do some manipulation, or just Google Sheets isn't cut out for that. And you might want to find a different tool to help you out here. And then another limitation is this only works with text logs. So if you got a log that is in a binary format of some sort, you either need to find a tool that can convert the raw binary into text, or you're going to have to find a different solution entirely. So those are some of the major limitations, but I'd highly recommend if you've never done log analysis before, you're new to cybersecurity, you don't know how to use the command line, the Linux tools to help you like cut, sort, grep, awk, all of those things. This might be an easy way to get started, and especially because it doesn't require you to install anything or pay for anything. So I highly recommend this. And if you know, if this kind of gets you 90% of the way there, I'd say it's a pretty good starting point. And hopefully at that point, you can take some of these concepts, some of these general skills that you've learned here, and use that to help you pick up another tool. But yeah, I hope you all found that helpful.